Okay, I believe we are broadcasting live. I'd like Restream to verify that for me, but that's not happening here. But if somebody is watching out there and can comment and let us know that that we are live, I should be able to see your chat messages as of about a few seconds from now. Yeah, so I think we are broadcasting live on multiple channels at the moment on the Facebook page of Popular Resistance and the Facebook page of Cable Community Radio, among various other platforms, including Twitter, YouTube, VK, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And then this goes out as a podcast afterwards if you look for This Week with David Rovix, wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm still hoping somebody will tell me that we are really broadcasting live right now. I think we are. Restream just isn't giving me that little feedback that I'm looking for, but I believe we're live everywhere right now. And today, this is Discussions with David, which comes to you every Wednesday and sometimes on Fridays as well at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And today I have the great pleasure of spending the hour with Norm Stockwell, who is the publisher of the Progressive magazine and longtime community radio station manager and activist and programmer and writer from Madison, Wisconsin. Norm, it's wonderful to have you here.
Great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I don't want to. I never know how to start with like easy questions. If we could just like dive right in. I'm just wondering, for one thing, you have a very long back. Most of the time I've known you, you were station manager at WORT, right?
Yeah, operations coordinator was my official title. We were a collective staff, so we didn't have a station manager per se, but the duties, the administrative duties of many of those tasks fell to me. So, but yeah, I was at WRT from 1983 until 2016. And in 2016, I moved over here to the Progressive magazine, which is a 112-year-old political magazine based in Madison, Wisconsin. So I like to tell people I moved backward on the technological spectrum from radio to print, but still sort of in the same place on the political spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also it's moving backwards on the technology spectrum in the modern age after various forms of media have gone through multiple different transformations and industrial collapses. And it's quite a time to be doing any kind of media or content creation, as the term goes these days.
Yeah. Well, we're still firmly committed to print, and this is our newest issue just out this week, in fact, and it's a 72-page paper magazine that goes out to subscribers all around the globe, mostly in the United States.
And it's on the now, as of I think the past couple of days, it can be found on the shelves in places like here in Portland, in all the New Seasons, Whole Foods. I don't know where they have magazines that still have
small bookstores, and we actually recently started being carried in the Kroger grocery stores around the country as well. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. They're all over the place, and actually the working class shops at Kroger. So that's a really nice thing to be able to have the Progressive available there among the other less desirable publications that may be found in Kroger. But I want to talk about this question of free speech and platforming, and which is, I mean, without getting into any particular details, it's something that comes up a lot in various circles of the internet and the left, and it's been an issue for a very, very long time. And this is something you've had a lot of experience with. So I wonder how did you? And I mean, it's just such an ongoing thing. It's hard to even say how much of an issue it is in some circles, but especially perhaps in the past 10 years or so, maybe. But like this must have come up repeatedly, as I imagine, especially at a community radio station. And I just wonder how I mean, it's a very long question. I wonder how would you take a stab at trying to start to answer the question of how you navigate those waters?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I'll take a step back and talk about our magazine first. The Progressive magazine has always been a fierce advocate for free speech. The founder of the magazine, Fighting Bob La Follette, was a progressive senator in the early part of the 20th century and was actually censured by the U.S. Senate for his outspoken views against entry into World War I. And there was quite a debate, and he eventually won his case in that regard. But he has a very famous speech in 1917 about the rights of citizens to speak against U.S. entry into the war. That tradition has carried on in the pages of this magazine throughout its history. In 1954, we did a very powerful issue exposing Senator Joseph McCarthy. It was at the same time as Edward R. Murrow's television broadcast on that topic. And more recently, our editor for many years from the mid-70s until his death in 1994 was Erwin Knoll, who spoke passionately in favor of free speech. In fact, under much criticism, there was an incident here in Madison where members of the Nazi party were speaking on WORT community radio, and people from the community gathered and protested outside the station, actually broke a window at one point. And Erwin Knoll, editor of The Progressive, was a defender of their right to speak, because his notion was that you counter bad speech with more good speech rather than with limitations of speech. In my own time at WRT, there was an interesting incident where in the year 2000, Lyndon LaRouche used an obscure piece of federal communications law to push his way onto community radio stations. And we had an incident at WRT where the LaRouche campaign, he was running for president at the time, and they contacted us to get time on the air. And we said we would only agree to it if he would come on a live show and take questions. And so he agreed to do that. And I had him on, but I also contacted a number of people in advance to let them know the show was happening, particularly people who had a sophisticated critique of LaRouche and the LaRouche organization. And right. He was on the air, and then people called in with questions and challenged him and so on. So it was a way of, although he was within his, at that time, legal rights, they actually changed that law after this this incident, but he was within his legal rights to be on the radio, but was at the same time challenged and questioned by people that were prepared to take him on. And so that kind of thing, I think, is a very valuable way to deal with these sorts of situations. The flip side is what's happened recently with the deplatforming of Donald Trump and a number of other people espousing conspiracy theories.
Which was my next question. Please right, continue. Yeah. Yes.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think this is very important, because the power of social media to misrepresent and misdirect people has been evidenced, not only here in the United States, but internationally. For instance, in Myanmar, where the internet was used to basically fuel the attacks on Rohingya people in that country. And that's something that has forced some of the social media platforms like Facebook to kind of take a look at what they're doing. Unfortunately, we still have a situation where these unaccountable corporate players like Facebook, like Twitter, are given this sort of universal power to decide what is free speech and what is not, or what is dangerous speech, let's say, in the case of the promoting of conspiracy theories, or in the case of the Rohingya genocide. And so the problem is not simply the regulation of these platforms, but it's who gets to make the decision, who gets to regulate the platforms. And what we've seen in the last several months is that, yes, Facebook and Twitter and other platforms are saying, hey, we have to, control this bad information, this disinformation. But the blowback of that is affecting progressive media outlets as well. And I'll give an example. I wrote a couple of articles on our website about this over the last year or so, where Facebook now is keeping publications like ours from promoting our posts.
Wow.
Facebook has a system they call promoting your post, but really
I know. I've used
really
it.
it's buying advertising.
Yeah, it's very problematic, and sometimes it works just well enough to keep you buying the advertising. But I was always impressed as a performer touring and promoting gigs on Facebook, like with their paid promotion, that it always worked only just well enough to keep you doing it. Like, it never was like you got a really good crowd because of it. It would always be like, yeah, that $5 definitely brought in 3 people, so I guess I'll do it again, But like, yeah. Anyway.
Well, it's a way of getting the word out to people that aren't normally in your circle. And so that, since most of Facebook is based on only talking to people that you already know, the fact that they have a mechanism that lets you reach out to people who don't know about you is important. But since just before the November election, they have not allowed the promotion of posts that discuss social or political issues, is the way they've phrased it. And so the result of that is we have not been able to promote articles from our magazine on the Facebook platform, because everything we write is about social or political issues. And so, their attempt to counter disinformation has resulted in the stifling of actual fact-based information from progressive voices. So this is a real problem.
And that the folks who are organizing around trying to prevent a coup, who had the website and Facebook page and all that, if you tried to share any of that stuff on Facebook or on Twitter, as me and many other people tried to do, you got messages saying that this is dangerous content, you can't share this, or something along those lines. And actually, just because the word coup is in it, or it's, and then the algorithms. I wonder what you have, if you have any particular thoughts on the algorithms, in addition to how and who controls these. I mean, the platforms and how they determine what anybody sees is also has nothing to do with sort of chronology or how many people actually follow somebody. It's really much more of a complex formula having to do with keeping people's eyes on the screens. And I mean, it seems like basically to feed conflict and to encourage people to argue with each other and to see the posts that are going to make them the angriest. And I mean, it's my impression. I don't know. I mean, it just seems
I saw a great quote one time from somebody who said, I have in the palm of my hand a device that can access all of the information from human history, and I use it to show pictures of cats and argue with people I don't know. And, that's really kind of what we've seen over the past, particularly, I think, the last 4 or 5 years, where Facebook has really transitioned into that kind of a platform. Twitter, I think, was actually more of that platform for quite a while. I want to say, though, also about this issue of the algorithms, that Facebook has a number of times changed the way it does things, and the result has been very detrimental, again, for progressive publications, but actually news sites in general. Just a few years ago, Facebook moved everybody in the media world to this new system that they were developing, and everybody was using Facebook to promote their news stories. And then all of a sudden, they changed the algorithm so that people would only see, posts from their top 50 friends or whatever it was. And after the whole ecosystem of media had moved to using Facebook in a different way, suddenly we were shut out from that. So that kind of again, the commercial marketplace regulating speech has not been positive for progressive voices in the media, or any kind of sort of general voices of truth and information.
Yeah, or even just anybody. I would maybe even say anybody creating content. I mean, it even goes beyond what kind of content. It's just all content is going to be sort of controlled and monetized by the big tech platforms. There's a wonderful book called "Death of the Artist," which kind of goes along with the different kinds of industries and how big tech companies have strangled them, from journalism to visual arts to music to writers of books, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, every one of these industries has suffered in some multiple collapses, I would say, is one way you could put it, over the past several decades. You know,
well, the late great Utah Phillips used to talk about how the commercial music world had strip mined our culture and then sold it back to us. And really, that's what we've seen also with these internet platforms like Facebook. I mean, the devastation of the media ecosystem because of what Facebook has done is just tremendous. People, I think, if you do polls, the number of people that get their news only from their Facebook feed now is huge. And I wrote an article for the 10th anniversary of Indie Media Seattle back in 2009, where I talked about how all of these things that are now used by Facebook, by bloggers, even by CNN, were all developed in the indie media movement of the 1990s and 2000s. And then they were picked up by these commercial enterprises and commodified and monetized in ways that was never intended. And so, whereas it used to be independent journalists went out and documented an event with their small video camera or their mini disc recorder and then shared that information over the internet through the indie media websites. Now, all of a sudden, CNN is doing this citizen journalism, they call it, where people send in their cell phone videos of every event that they happen to see. And it's great to have that information getting out there, don't get me wrong, but I think that the difference between CNN taking your cell phone video from you for free and using it on their channel, which they then sell advertising around, versus independent journalists posting something in order to share information with an activist community is a very different thing.
Yeah, and then posting the information on a place like Facebook as opposed to on somewhere like Indie Media is another thing as well, right? And then what I find so insidious as a working artist using Facebook, my art much the same way that working journalists are doing the same thing, using Facebook to try to promote what the work they're doing, and you can see how well it's working or not depending on your sales and very clear numbers like that. And when Facebook changes how they do things as their algorithms, it affects people like us immediately and dramatically. But the vast majority of sort of consumers of the Facebook feed, I think, generally don't notice that anything just happened. Have you seen this pattern?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for the most part, any changes that Facebook makes to their algorithm, you don't realize what is missing because you don't see it anymore. And so if you're only limited to hearing from your top 25 friends or something in your newsfeed, you don't realize that you're not hearing from the other people. You think they're just not posting. So I think it's very detrimental to allow these corporate entities to make these decisions. And one of the pushes right now, we had an article on our website, progressive.org, recently about this. One of the pushes is for these platforms to look at a human rights framework when they make decisions about who they're going to deplatform or who they're going to censor or promote, rather than simply doing it as a corporate decision. And I think that really needs to be discussed more. And I know there are organizations that that are advocating for this, but I think it's worth bringing this more into the public. It's not just Mark Zuckerberg going and testifying in front of Congress about the fact that he thinks Facebook is really trying to be a good citizen, and that their goal in the world is to make a community of everybody. That may be true. It may be that he was very naive in terms of his visions of what a community would be or could be. But I think that there are people that have been working on these issues for a long time, and that have established norms and systems for how you promote human rights and freedom of speech and so on. And Mark Zuckerberg and the Facebook empire are not tuned into those.
No,
even though it's worth noting we're on Facebook right now for many people.
That's right. But I mean, it's like saying we're on the telephone. I mean, it's like this is where people are communicating. So I mean, of course, we're going to be using that corporation just as we used to use Bell, right?
Right.
It's just as we use Exxon.
Right. I remember years ago, the San Francisco Mime Troupe got a big grant from a corporate entity. It was Bank of America or American Express or something like that. And they immediately issued a press release, and they said, we're going to bite the hand that feeds us. We're going to accept this money, but we're also going to criticize this corporation in our work, because it's,
that's what Chumbawamba did when they got a gig with a General Motors commercial. They gave all the money away to anti-GM campaigners. John, not to belabor the subject too much, but with the pogroms against the Rohingya and other events, similar events that have been really tremendously encouraged by Facebook's algorithms. I mean, it just seems like it's just, to me, it just seems like such a dangerous thing, such a subject that needs more discussion, not just about whether Facebook deplatforms the Burmese military or something like that, because that's not really the question. It's as long as people are posting stuff like saying, "Hey, that guy just just attacked my neighbor's wife," or whatever they're posting that to get people upset and false stories, whatever. I mean, it's very much the same kind of thing that happens anywhere in the world. It's just that in some cases it'll lead to somebody getting a whole lot of hate mail on Twitter, and other times it leads to them getting their the whole family killed. So it's.
Yeah, and we've certainly seen, again, here in the United States in the last few months since the November election, people who have been, seriously threatened on social media and then actually threatened in real life, and it's a very dangerous thing. It's not just the social media platforms. This use of technology for spreading hate has been around for a long time. The 1994 genocide in Rwanda was in a large part promoted by the use of radio stations in that country to promote fear, disinformation, and hatred of an ethnic population. And similarly here in the United States in the 1940s, Father Charles Coughlin, who was a promoter of right-wing hate and racism and anti-Semitism, was a big feature on the radio in the United States. So
and on multiple stations all across the country, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't
exactly.
Even
and
regional.
So the forces of hate always find a way to use the media, and what we're seeing now with the deplatforming of people like Donald Trump is that these people are now moving to other darker parts of the web to continue their conversations in less public forums. And so you have, the space is still there for this kind of hate speech, but it's just not on Facebook or YouTube anymore.
I mean, actually, thinking back to my own personal experience with getting banned from Facebook for a month for promoting a music band that has a name that we cannot mention on Facebook, I learned the hard way. But basically, that's when I got it. That's when I got a Reddit account, and when I also started looking more seriously into broadcasting and doing other things on other platforms. Because the easy, lazy thing to do is just fall into the dominant platform. But then what happens, as we both know, and I think as I think more people should know, is that once the platform becomes dominant and basically strangles all the competition, suddenly they change all the rules, as they've done, as Amazon did for book selling, as Facebook has done in so many different ways with their algorithms, and as has been done by many different platforms in the music business that used to offer better deals, and then suddenly you find you signed off to have your music sold on iTunes, and then suddenly you find it's all being given away all over the place, and you're not selling any CDs anymore. And and everybody just somehow agreed to that. And it all happened, when Spotify started their free tier in 2013, what was the death knell,
Yeah. Well, I remember, back in the mid 70s when cable television first began, and, people were saying, oh, it's great. Now the left will be able to have a channel on television. But instead, of course, what we got is, 500 channels of reruns of.
Hello. Oh, I don't know what's going on. We just Norm just froze there. Everybody can still hear me. Tell me. We are listening to Discussions with David, which comes to you every Wednesday and some Fridays at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, noon Central. We just lost Norm. I don't know why. And maybe, yeah, can you guys still hear me? You can still hear me, but okay, good. Thank you for confirming that. And you can hear me, but not Norm. And hopefully Norm will click that link and we'll get him back. And it's not anybody, it is not the NSA or the CIA or the FBI intervening with our broadcast. This is just a technical problem that just happened to occur midway through my broadcast, even though Norm is a experienced professional broadcaster with a very good internet connection in a college town with a very good internet. But shit happens, huh? So, thank you for confirming. I am audible on multiple platforms, in fact, but Norm Stockwell has vanished. But I believe he'll come back. Big Brother. I think it's Big Brother. Yeah, that would be my first assumption. Is it's the NSA or somebody who doesn't want us talking to each other. Let's see. I think Norm will come back, but I could sing a song for you guys in the meantime. I mean, it's like silly to have just nothing going on. I could, yeah. Anybody got a question? He is a great guest, isn't he? David Goodman. Yeah, you would be a great guest too. Actually, come to think of great guests, I want to have you on, Mr. Goodman. I know which Goodman you are too. You're the one in Boston. I doubt you're Amy's brother in Vermont. Commenting there, I'm pretty sure you're David Goodman in Boston. Is that right? And but if you're the other David Goodman, then I want to have you as my guest as well. And whose money could we use to build an alternative media platform? I mean, that's a good question. Although, there are investors who invest in these platforms sometimes. That we should ask Norm when he comes back. Come back, Norm. I know in some platforms actually have serious backers, like The Intercept at one point, I think, had a whole bunch of money, but they don't seem to have that much money anymore. It's easy to spend money when you have a lot of money, I believe. I've heard. Let's see. this, I mean, I hope. What happened, Norm? Let's see. Oh, we got an email. Go to an email. Come back. And now show me the email. Computer crash. Okay. He'll be back. Computer crash. I mean, it could be. Presumably. Well, I mean, if he probably used his cell phone to tell me that his computer crashed. He could sign on with his cell phone, depending on how badly the computer crashed. He could, but he'll figure out which way to do that, I'm sure. When I first went to Madison, Wisconsin, where Norm is talking to us from, I was I think a teenager. It was in the late '80s, and I was with a bunch of friends driving across the country in a drive-away car, one of those cars where I believe you have 10 days to get it across the country, A1 auto drive-away, I believe it was. The year was probably 1987 or 88 or something like that. And me and three friends from Seattle, one of whom I distinctly remember did not have a driver's license, but was very critical of everybody else's driving, understandably. But we drove across the country. We stopped in Madison on the way, and the one thing I especially remember about Madison in the late '80s was that there were 11 different student newspapers or alternative newspapers. I think what it was, maybe so many of them were student papers, and generally left wing papers. I remember one was called the Student Insurgent, not a common term in the '80s. Student insurgent, not two terms that tended to go together that often, and that was particularly memorable, seeing all those papers around, and then coming back to Madison as a touring artist. You know, when I started doing that, which was in the later '90s, and by then there were not 11 of those papers in Madison anymore. And then I proceeded to have a lot of very positive experiences in Madison over many years. I'm just running my mouth about Madison because Norm's from Madison there. Covered in snow at the moment, if you looked out his back window. Although the parking lot is cleared of snow, the other areas have lots of snow around, as is frequently the case in winter in Madison. And Ben Mansky used to live in Madison. I think he's now on the East Coast somewhere teaching. And Ben Mazel is another Ben who lived in Madison, both who had a lot of impact on my life, particularly when I was in Madison. They both organized a variety of gigs, very different sorts of gigs. Ben Mazel was running Weedstock for many years, the pot legalization sort of festival, which always got a lot of people arrested who were trying to get to the festival with pot. But other people always managed to get in there with pot somehow or other, including Ben Mazel. But maybe they just didn't bother arresting him because they're like, okay, he's the organizer. We know he has pot. We'll just let him go. Or I don't know who's the mayor of Madison now? The mayor of Madison used to be somebody who came to one of my gigs. I remember, but I don't know who it is now. It was somebody very nice a long time ago. But I think there was a conference of mayors, actually, if I recall, in Madison, wasn't it? I think I sang at it. But that could be just something. It was some kind of conference that the mayor was at, I think. Maybe it wasn't the conference of mayors. They wouldn't have let me at such a thing. Must have been something else. Well, Mr. Stockwell, Mr. Norm's computer crashed. Serious crash, huh? Could sign in with her phone. Let's see. And Madison used to have a it was a socialist monthly socialist gathering. People sang songs, and it was run by a veteran of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, who died a few years ago, I believe. Who was one of the last surviving members of the Abe Lincoln Brigade, who Norm most certainly knew as well. What was his name? Can't remember. And I believe the most notable thing about Madison at the moment, for me, running my mouth on Madison some more, is it was the last time I saw Anne Feeney was in Madison, when maybe was it 2 years ago or so? Was it? Yeah, I don't remember. Maybe even less recently, more recently than that. And we were both flown to Madison to participate in maybe it was a 10th anniversary of the uprising. Is that possible? No, that would be now, right? So that wouldn't have been no, one wouldn't have been the 10th, but it was they the uprising in 2011 in Madison, which happened to more or less coincide with the Arab Spring rebellions in Tunisia and Egypt, and I was trying to get out there, but it didn't manage it during the time when they were having big protests on the State House lawn. My screen flickered for a moment, but I guess that was not related to Norm. The Legend of Weedstock, Kelly Benjamin. There in you organize strikes in Madison? Kelly, I want to have you on my show too. Did I already ask you that about that? I can't remember, but I want to have you on the show too. And yeah. Well, I mean, I can still talk about Madison, but I wasn't planning on talking about Madison. Oh, but I was now as I remember why I was mentioning Anne Feeney. I mean, it's always a good time to mention Anne Feeney, but Anne Feeney is currently in hospital in Pittsburgh. She unfortunately has been having a lot of health issues for many years now, but most recently um, was hit by a swinging spring door at the assisted living place in Pittsburgh, and fell and broke her back, and then got hospitalized about a month ago. And in the hospital, she got COVID-19 and now pneumonia, and so she's having a very hard time there in the hospital right now in Pittsburgh. Her son and daughter are with her there. And the last time I saw her in the flesh was in Madison, and it was fun singing songs in front of the State House. They have a wonderful songbook of songs about the uprising. Let's see, we have another message. Back in a second. Okay, might be an old computer that he has there. I think we can say that the Progressive magazine needs more funding. We need to buy Norm a new computer, and I just got a refurbished version of my old computer, which is basically slightly faster than the old one and won't run out of memory quite as soon. So that's good. But well, Madison has the most wonderful thing, at least as a touring musician in the 90s. The most wonderful thing about Madison was the Earth Day to May Day events. They would start with Earth Day celebrations and protests and stuff, and then there would be a whole week of activities leading to May 1st. So from April 22nd to May 1st, making this connection between the environmental movement and the labor movement very clear with a whole series of events, often involving music, often involving both me and Ann Feeney. In fact, that was, I think, one of the first gigs I ever did with Ann Feeney was organized by Ben Mansky there at the University of Wisconsin during one of those Earth Day to May Day things in the late 90s. I think it was me and Ann and Robert Hoyt, if I recall, but now it's been a long time. And the student gigs, I mean, all those colleges seem to they ran out of funding in the early noughties. I think many people my age just assumed it was that we were getting old and no longer interesting to the students, but actually the reality is whether that's the case or not, they ran out of money. They don't get that funding anymore on the campuses. Not sure exactly what that is about, although I have my suspicions, and I also have suspicions that Norman Stockwell would know a lot about that subject, since he was a student activist before he became a community radio broadcaster and organizer. And there's a lot of student activists in Madison who ended up staying in Madison. It's a nice place. And if you're from somewhere else, and then you don't necessarily want to go back there after living in Madison, at least for a lot of folks. Well, I officially think that Norm's computer is broken. Huh. I wonder. Your phone? Let's see. See if we get him back. We might get him back. It was a darn good first 27 minutes of that interview, I thought. I believe it was 27 minutes. I hope my running my mouth isn't too horribly boring. But then again, the nice thing about this is anybody who's bored can just leave and go do something else. And I mean, if I were relying on anybody to give me something to talk about, then that would not be working very well, because everybody out there is just so fascinated that you're not, saying anything on the chat stream. I'm, always hoping to have something to go on there. Somebody maybe mention Madison or something to talk about. But what I really wanted to do was talk to Norm, or not just talk. It's best to have somebody to talk to. I have always found, although, nothing against people that just talk to themselves as long as it's good for them. We started the morning over here with our neighbors getting their apartment burglarized, except they were home, and then ended up pinning the burglar to the floor, and the cops came and took him away. It was quite a eventful way to start the morning. And then an interview where the publisher of the Progressive magazine's computer crashed and froze and may have died an untimely death. But when computers die, it's generally not timely time to die. Yeah. And, one of these things you realize when your neighbor's apartment gets broken into is that you live, these things remind you once again of the quality of the doors and the locks. Like you pick the lock. So the locks there's only one lock. It's like, if you've ever lived in any major city in the world, like New York or, a lot of other places, then, the locks that we have on the doors in Portland are just a joke. I mean, if you're trying to burglarize houses, yeah, Portland is a good place to be a burglar. Everything's made of wood, and half the walls are rotten. So you don't even need to go through the door. Just punch through the wall. I mean, these doors are so weak. These locks are. I mean, I don't want to advertise, for burglars, but man, I mean, any of these doors, anybody could break these doors down in about 1 minute. or less. If they're, anything, if you weigh more than 100 pounds, I think you could break one of these doors easily. So the locks are just suggestions of a lock. It's not really a lock. Like in New York City and Mexico City, they lock the doors. And it's like there's rods. You have you have this rod that goes from the floor to the door, to the middle of the door, and it's like in the door, screwed into the door, which is made out of metal or coated in, it has a metal sheet, on both sides. It's not just like flimsy piece of wood. You can shoot it, and then yeah, and then we had 3 different locks with bolts and then chains. I mean, that's just typical. Here it's just this little, you turn the little thing, and then they call that a lock. And the doors are made of wood. But I was once in a motel, cheap motel in southern Utah, in Cedar City, Utah. Easily one of the most memorable evenings of my life. Except I don't even remember what I was doing with the day. I think actually I had played the night before in Salt Lake City, and I was playing the next day somewhere in Arizona, actually. That is the situation. And I had one night without a gig, and it was a very long drive, and I was going to do what I very rarely did, actually, and stay in a motel. I almost always would stay with friends or would, time the drive, so I'd just do a long drive and then end up at a friend's place at the end of it, not split it up and stay at a motel. I didn't make a whole lot of money, and I was very thrifty, and I prefer staying with people than hotels because the cleaning chemicals give me a headache anyway. So I don't like hotels. So, but anyway, this night it was like one of those situations. I was in a motel in Cedar City, southern Utah, and it's a little town. I had just eaten at some burger place or something, not very good, and I'd gone to bed, and I had just started to like drift off to sleep. I think it was like 1 a.m. And then I hear this pounding at the door, and that somebody's pounding on the door and saying, open up, and I know you're in there. And I'm like, I know I'm in here too, but who are you? And basically within about 30 seconds, the door was open, broken, and this gigantic man. I mean, I might be exaggerating because of the way memory works, but I believe he was about 6.5 feet tall, and his arms were like the size of my legs, and I just thought, oh, geez, I'm doomed. There's no point in even trying to defend myself. I mean, this is ridiculous. This guy is just like huge, angry. I mean, I was just like, oh, geez, I don't know what's happening here, but this is it. And I looked around real quickly in the hotel before he broke the door down, noticed there was no way out other than the front door. And then he calmed down, and looked around, came inside, walked around, looked around. He said, oh, you're not the drug dealers who stole my stuff. And it was just like the most wonderful. It went from being so terrible to being so wonderful, because I was just like so glad nobody, I was alive, and the guy had not attacked me, and he just left. And I was like, gosh, I don't care that the door's broken. I'm just so glad that I'm alive. And I actually just went back to sleep with the broken door. I remember like asking the guy at the front desk, like, maybe I could get another room, without a broken door. And I think he just like, I don't remember what happened. He didn't say anything, or I was just like, oh, fuck it, I'm just going back to sleep. I mean, you're not going to have somebody break into your room twice in one night. I figured, no, just leave the door broken. So that's my flimsy door in Utah story, which has nothing to do with Norm Stockwell that I'm aware of. But let's see. Oh, we got more messages from Norm. He said, I hope you're playing a song or something. Gmail not working. Oh my God. Let's see. So this is definitely a conspiracy. It's definitely a conspiracy. I'm going to give him this link though. Let's see. See if we can get that link, and we can talk for a little while more if he manages to get that link. Poor Norm. But we'll see. We'll see. See, now somehow or other I've been talking for like the past 20 minutes, so there's no point in stopping now. If he's going to be coming back in, we can talk. We can try do another interview another time. It was a good 27 minutes, though. I mean, that first 27 minutes was well worth. That's a good length too. Really, I mean, half hour is a nice length. You like my setup? I got Mitch's. I have this curtain in the back is just, we got it so that if we had guests, we don't have a guest room, but at least they could have like a little visual privacy on this side of the curtain. And then the pandemic hit and I started doing broadcasting and realized the curtain made a nice backdrop, like much better than piles of toys and clothing and yesterday's dinner. But then it was all dark and I just looked like a sort of a head floating in dark space. And then I got these lights, these lights here, just a few days ago, and now I shine them on the curtain, and it's significantly more professional than it was. Although now I look kind of overexposed. I don't know what just happened. Oh, it's not in the same spot. Oh, here we go. See, lights. It's like very fancy. I don't know quite what to do with the lights, but I've got these lights anyway. Yeah, I don't know. But the glare in the glasses is still there, no matter what. And which is from the screen, I guess. So now, every time I start broadcasting, I think, oh, I have to figure out how to turn down the brightness. And then I, once again, fail to do so. And then I have to do something else. And it's pretty good, though. So we will see. We'll see if Norm comes back to at least just like say goodbye to everybody. I hope his computer isn't permanently broken, but it might be, in which case he has much bigger things to worry about than getting back on this. Like, he'll need a new computer. It's important for his work, I'm pretty sure. But, hey. Hey, Norm. You're on your phone, huh?
I'm on my phone now. Yeah, it's interesting. We're talking about all of these different changes to platforms, and we could also talk about the changes to hardware. How you can't have an old computer anymore because it doesn't keep up with the new technology of streaming and so on and so forth.
It's insidious. I mean, because the old computers, I mean, everything gets faster and more pixels and more fancy, and then you have to get a newer computer to be able to keep up with the platforms. So it's
right.
Yeah, and that was your computer crash there. That was like
yeah.
NSA.
It was a major system crash there.
And it's still you're on your phone now. I mean, your computer. I hope it's
on my phone because I still can't get back into. Let's see if we can get in now.
Yeah, we need to.
But anyway,
you got bigger things to worry about than talking to me now. Need to get your computer working again. Oh man. Yeah, I just got a refurbished laptop, which is working much better than the one that just sort of died on me. But yeah. Oh man. But in the last 5 minutes before we say goodbye to everybody who's been I've been telling people about Madison. I don't know who's left. There's people out there watching, and I've been telling them about all my Madison experiences. The last time I was in Madison was to actually play a gig with Ann Feeney just a couple of years ago, and Ann is now in hospital in Pittsburgh with COVID-19 and pneumonia, as you may have heard. Yeah, but can we? Have you been following the events in Australia with Google and the Australian government talking about taxing Google search for ending people up on media platforms?
No.
That's been it's been on BBC regular featured on BBC regularly. Here we are. Now we got two Norms. Let's
Hey, why don't you switch back to the real Norm, and I'll turn off the phone.
We got the real Norm. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. Now I got you out of there. Yeah.
Okay.
Will the real Norm Stockwell please stand up?
Much better. I apologize for the technological glitches there. Hopefully you can edit out some of that in the final version.
Actually, I mean, we were talking for 27 minutes before you vanished, and really the half-hour format is a perfectly fine length for an interview anyway. So I'm just such a fan of the show Fresh Air that I had to do the hour-long format, even though really half hour would probably get more probably more people would view it, and I'd probably lose fewer people halfway through the show if I just did a half hour. So I've never studied the statistics on those things.
I've always been a fan of the half-hour long form interview format, and I think it is has been proven in the world of community radio to be a very, very successful format. We didn't get to talk nearly as much as I would have liked to about radio, but I think radio is a very, very important technology for communicating, because you really have people telling their stories in their own voice in ways that no other medium is able to do quite as well, quite as efficiently, and quite as affordably. Before we go, because I know you want to end this shortly, I do want to again encourage people to check out the Progressive magazine. You can go to our website, progressive.org. You can subscribe to the print magazine, which we would appreciate very much. But you can also read all of the content that we post on our website daily, absolutely free. We don't have a paywall. We don't have blistering ads that interfere with your reading of the articles. So I encourage people to check it out.
And how do you avoid the paywall and the ads and all that? I mean, do you have is it crowdsourced support like with community radio?
So I mean, our support comes partly from subscriptions to the print magazine, and partly from individual donors who donate as we make appeals through the mail or through the internet. And we made a political decision not to have a paywall and to make our content available to people, because we think that it's important. And so that's what we have chosen to do. And I think that, people should consider supporting all of the different forms of community media in their orbit. Your local community radio station, your independent weekly newspaper in your town, and magazines like the Progressive that really do survive on donations and support from readers. And it's the model of journalism changed radically in this country during the 20th century, and part of it was because of the loss of the postal subsidy for distribution of newspapers that we had back in the early part of the century, and part of it was from the influx of commercial advertising into the pages of newspapers, which then was pushed out again by the internet as as technologies changed. But newspapers responded to the commercial pressure by changing the way that they handled news and information as well. It used to be that you had many, many different newspapers with many points of view coming into people's homes. In rural America, people were getting sometimes 3 and 4 different newspapers delivered to their homes during a week, and one had one perspective, one had another perspective. They might have been in multiple languages, and we have lost so much of that with the consolidation of media and with the pressure caused by advertisers to go to this what's called objective journalism, but what it really means is giving voice to the dominant point of view, the dominant culture. You don't have any labor programs on, very few, obviously, there's some on community media, but there's none on commercial media.
Nothing.
But you have, the marketplace report on National Public Radio. You have all of the different business channels available on cable. So one side of the equation of capitalism is getting a lot of coverage, and the other side isn't. The regular working people and their voices and their stories are not getting coverage. Absolutely. And that's true. That's true in so many different aspects of our media today. The Progressive magazine, goes back to the early 20th century. It was started on January of 1909, and the model was to have a progressive voice, to have a voice for working people, to advocate for the rights of working people, and that's the role that we continue to play.
Do you have a few minutes? Do you need to run? Is that okay? When I first came to Madison in the late 80s, there were 11 alternative newspapers. I went walking around State Street counting all the different alternative papers I could find. There were 11 that I found, one of which was called the Student Insurgent, and I just loved the name, which just seemed somewhat out of place in 1988 at the time.
The Madison Insurgent started... It started originally as a single sheet of calendar information about progressive and left events in town. It started as an 8.5/11. It went to 8.5/14. It went to 11 by 17, and then it went to full print newspaper and was published for many years here. And then that evolved into a radio program, which is still on WRT Radio. The Insurgent Radio Kiosk is a daily broadcast 4 times a day on WRT that gives information about news and events of things going on in the community.
And what is, just maybe in closing, why is it important to still have a print publication? What are some of the reasons other than it's another way to have a platform that's not on Facebook, but aside from that?
Right. Well, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, there is a sort of a gravitas that is given to an article when it appears in print. If your article is printed in a magazine like this, people pay more attention to it than if it's just a post on the internet. Secondly, it really is pleasurable to hold this kind of technology in your hands. It's much easier to read in bed with a magazine than it is looking at a tiny screen on your phone or the bright light of your tablet or whatever. It's a technology that can reach people wherever they're at. You don't need to have an internet connection to read the Progressive magazine. You can get it at the newsstand or the library, or maybe somebody's left a stack of them in your local laundromat. It's something that everybody can access, no matter what their access to technology. And that makes a big difference, I should say, in places like Wisconsin, where in many parts of the state, people still don't have access to broadband internet, today in the year 2021. And so...
and then there's also the prison population, like 1% or so of the society is imprisoned, right? And then,
right. And by the way, that's worth mentioning. We give free subscriptions to prisoners. Any prisoner that requests it, we'll send a free subscription, and we get correspondence from prisoners all the time. We cover prison issues in the pages of the magazine, I encourage people to contact us about that as well.
How about on WORT? Did you have many imprisoned listeners?
Yeah, in the years that I was at WORT, there was one particular show that got a lot of call-ins at night from people who were incarcerated in the Madison area. And it really was kind of a lifeline, because people could call the radio station and give shout outs to their friends and family members in the community. And this is a lot of community radio stations have this sort of thing, where it's almost like a way that prisoners can write letters to their community over the air, over the radio airwaves, and it's a very important lifeline of communication for people who are incarcerated to be able to speak out on community radio stations.
Yeah, it's really special. That when I lived in Houston, there was a wonderful show on the radio there, community radio there. I've often thought about starting a little low power station outside of a prison where a friend of mine is in prison, just so he can like have something to do. But there's a project that I never managed to quite get to. But Norm, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and I hope to have you again sometime when you get a new computer or on this old one.
Right. Thank you so much again. Apologies for the technological glitch there, but
no problem.
we do the best we can with what we have. So
with our limited resources, yes, support the Progressive magazine so Norm can get a new computer. That's what I was also saying during the break. And but yeah.
But please do check us out on the web at progressive.org. Lots of content posted there on a regular basis, and all of it made available because we feel that's important to get the word out.
Yeah. Thanks again, Norm. See you again.
Thank you so much.
Take care. And this has been a discussion with Norman Stockwell, interrupted by a half hour of technical problems. And thank you so much for listening, everybody. And you can find this soon archived if you look for This Week with David Rovics, wherever you get your podcasts. And it'll also be up in the Discussions with David playlist on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/drovics. And I'll be back in a couple days. And remember, mutual aid will get us through. Don't pay the rent. Trust your neighbors. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.